What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my Systems, Philosophy, and Mental Models course. I am Nate Rose with AI for Indies, and today's lesson is on eroding the boundaries through practice. You can't just think your way to a bigger imagination. You're gonna have to work your way there. So let's get into it. For most of history, the sequence was fixed. Learn first, then build. You spent years acquiring the knowledge, the credential, and the competency, and then once you've proven readiness, you were allowed to go make something. That model made sense when building required deep, domain-specific technical skill that took years to develop, but it doesn't make sense anymore. AI has collapsed the front end of that sequence. You no longer need years of prerequisite learning before you're allowed to touch the thing. You can pick up on the core concepts in a single focused conversation, get enough of a foundation to start, and then build. The learning still happens, it just doesn't have to happen in full before you begin. A session with an LLM can compress what used to take months of study into the time it takes to work through a problem together. And the understanding that you build that way is way stickier because it's attached to something real you were trying to construct. This is not a minor update to how you develop skills. It changes the entire entry point. And like every other concept in this module, it requires you to unlearn a deeply conditioned assumption that you have to be ready before you start. If you sit back and try to figure out what you should build before you've built anything, you're operating without data. The patterns, what works, what doesn't, what types of problems AI handles elegantly versus where it struggles, how to structure a request to get a genuinely useful result, none of that is visible until you're inside of the work. You develop fluency with these tools the same way you develop fluency with anything else, through repeated contact, through friction, through noticing what happens when you try things. The difference is that the feedback loop is dramatically compressed. What used to take months of practice to internalize can happen in a single well-pushed session. However, it requires you to actually push. Sitting on the edge and observing does not get you there. The specific habit that accelerates this fastest is intentionally moving into territory you don't yet understand. Not waiting until you figured it out, not researching until you feel ready, walking directly into the unfamiliar and using the conversation to find your footing. In practice, this looks like identifying a concept that you don't fully grasp. Perhaps how a specific type of system should be architected, or a framework that you keep hearing about but haven't internalized. And then opening a conversation by expressing that ignorance directly. Here's what I'm trying to understand. Here's what I think I know and where it gets fuzzy. Help me think through this. From there, you push. You go down threads. You ask it to explain differently when the first explanation doesn't land. You apply the concept hypothetically to your actual situation to see if your understanding holds. You pressure test the edges of what you think you're starting to grasp. And then, critically, you build something, even a small version, an MVP, a proof of concept, a rough draft of the system you were trying to understand. That act of building is what puts a bow on the thinking. You can follow an explanation and feel like you understand it, but the moment that you try to construct the thing, you find out what you actually understand and what was still surface level. The conceptualization and the construction are not separate phases. They basically complete each other. The ceilings from lesson 1, the resource ceiling, the domain ceiling, the execution ceiling, none of them break through thinking alone. They break through contact. Every time you push yourself into unfamiliar territory and come out on the other side with something built, your sense of what is possible expands by one real increment. Not theoretically, not because you read something convincing, but because you did a thing you didn't think you could do. And now you know what that feels like from the inside. That is the compounding effect of this practice. Each session makes the next one feel less intimidating. Each build makes the next ceiling feel less like a wall. The imagination doesn't expand in one big leap. It erodes through accumulated contact with the work. You have got to build your way out. That is the only way that it happens. Thanks for watching. Next lesson, we are wrapping up the module with layers of abstraction. How to zoom out and start thinking at a completely different level. And if you need some additional resources or want to tap into a community of creative people learning AI and how to wield it, and also just get my thoughts on a variety of different things whenever they pop into my head or I see something new, I can communicate it to you there, then you should join our AI for Indies Skool community.